Hi everyone, I'm Professor Sally Eve, CEO of Aspirational Futures. It's a real pleasure to be here today with Kia Binia, Vice President IT Operations at Splunk. Hi Kia, it's great to speak to you today.
Well, hello. Great speaking with you and great to be with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I know we've got a great topic area to dive into today, really looking at how companies can enhance their digital transformation stories. I'd love to dive into that with you, and maybe starting with how can we better plan ahead and stay innovative in this great ever-changing IT environment.
Well, I think every IT professional that I've ever come across chose this profession because of the change. It's very exciting because everything with technology has changed every year for the last few decades, and those changes have actually changed our lives. And that you can never say that more than today. We truly live in a world where almost everything we do is technology enabled. The downside of change, however, is that as humans, we don't always welcome them unless they have benefits to us. So in many cases, we love change when it's a new feature or a new capability that we get. We love it. It makes our lives simpler. It enhances productivity. It brings us closer. But at times when change goes wrong or it's too complex, there's a downside, and really what we've seen is the pace of change in the last few years, the velocity, the volume of change. That's what's really kind of created unfortunately a mess to clean up for the IT professionals. Now, if they can ride it and take advantage of it, it will lead to great business outcomes. But until they do, I'm afraid sometimes the complexity is a little bit overwhelming.
Absolutely, I so agree with that. I mean, it's human nature, isn't it, in terms of resistance to change. So I totally agree with you. I think for me, it's helping people kind of facilitate through that process. We've all experienced it, haven't we, over the last year, that continued uncertainty and complexity. I think if we can help people to be more comfortable with a context that is the way things are. So I think the education side along the technology, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more a little bit later on. I think that's so important to help empower people and help them learn and grow through this process as well. I think that's so true. And what do you think about the kind of fail fast approach to innovation?
Yeah, this is actually something, again, that's been commonplace within Silicon Valley, and many of the startups, started with this notion of saying there's no such a thing as failure. It's a growth mindset. It's the ability to learn, pivot quickly, continuously improve, and there's honestly some secrets that can be applied to almost any sector or any industry, which is connect with your customers deeply, understand their pain points and problems, and continuously improve and innovate around how to solve those problems. And vendors who do this very well really have transformed our lives and their industry. So one great example, and is Tesla. I drive a Tesla car. It's like any other car to people who don't own a Tesla. They look at it and say, well, it's a battery powered car, and there's many others. But as a Tesla customer, I can tell you that my car gets updates on a regular basis. These updates are meaningful. In some cases, it actually increases the range of the battery. So, who would have thought that you can buy a car that 3 years after you owned it, it's actually better than when you bought it in terms of range? These are examples of how change in a managed way can actually really enhance the experience of what the customers are looking for.
Absolutely, I so agree. I come from a telco background.
Yes.
So a couple of previous roles there as a CTO, but also as head of change management. And what you're saying there really resonates. For example, things like continuous integration, continuous deployment, that's now really coming into the telecoms industry. And it's showing that if you do those incremental changes, small changes on a regular basis, not only you've got that fast innovation really delivering for customers, but you're actually reducing the risk as well. So I couldn't agree more. It's such a huge point. I really resonates with me, that one. Absolutely.
Yeah, and quite frankly, this is the only way to keep the environment secure. I mean, the security that we now have to think about is that there are bad guys, they're going to find ways to get in, and unless you're continuously changing and improving and staying ahead of them. So, I do get security updates as well on my car, and I'm thankful that those updates are coming in. But again, it's a little bit of that mindset of, oh, what is the new capability that I'm getting? And they've done a great job in explaining to you what are the new features and new capabilities, some of which I may use right away, some of which may be transparent and invisible to me, like security updates, and some of which, quite frankly, I may not be ready to use. But the fact that that's being done, that means they're serving their entire customer base, not just focusing on one or two. And this that leading digital native companies take in their industry, and quite frankly, in many ways, they're disrupting industries that they play in by being able to serve the constituents in a much better way than the historical model of we'll get some surveys, we'll do some feedback, we'll get to it every 3 years. And, so we've seen this in banking, in retail, in telemedicine, in universities. All the verticals now are being disrupted with the same model, which is connect with your customer, get data, and make data how you make decisions around what features, what priorities, where to improve. And then, quite frankly, leverage the cloud and the cloud technologies and the modern technologies of today to really dynamically expand and be able to do things that commercially and technologically were not possible if you were to build a data center and buy hardware and try to do all of this just for one or two features that an application may use.
Absolutely. I think the other two things that spring to mind, we were talking there about being proactive rather than reactive, and that personalization of the experience to the consumer as well. That really came to the fore, informed choice about those different options and really reacting to those needs and moving from that to that proactive stance. So true. And I'm taking that from a different perspective maybe now. What are you seeing from an IT team perspective as we head through already spring, obviously, of 2021?
So Sally, many of the IT organizations have already been on this journey, and I want to kind of commend them because there are many very brave folks that prior to COVID, prior to the pandemic, had a transformation strategy. They were well on their way of modernizing. In some cases, those companies were the disruptors of the industry, as I talked about. So they were doing it because they viewed it as a competitive advantage. We had a second set of customers that had plans and were in the middle of that digital transformation. So they're in that process. It's not overnight. It's much harder, obviously, when you have an existing business and you're modernizing it than to start from scratch and make all the latest decisions. And then there's a third group that were more laggards. Unfortunately, in some cases, the people actually wanted to change, but the funding perhaps was not there. And what we've seen in the last year is everybody's woken up, and every single digital transformation project across every industry that we can see is being accelerated because what the global pandemic did, unfortunately, again, is to underscore the importance of being able to deliver these services in a remote and digital fashion. And you see this all over. You see customers as far as like Shopify that we've worked with come through the pandemic looking very strong because the e-commerce basically became default, and they helped many merchants go online and build digital stores. We also saw many of the more traditional telcos or the traditional banks move to a mobile everything model and leverage, again, accelerate the plans that perhaps they had on the drawing board and get funding around it.
Absolutely. I'm also seeing quite a lot of things around business model change as well. One of the things I liked is things around consumption-based pricing, as an example.
Absolutely.
Really helping organizations, for example, enabling kind of pay as you grow very much, and literally for what you're using, and really helping support that investment in innovation as well. I think one of the things I really like seeing that Splunk's focusing on is that predictive pricing.
Correct.
I really like that. I think that's super impressive, and also predictive pricing as well. I think that's a huge development there that's really supportive for organizations as well.
Yeah, and for us, honestly, we had many customers who told us, we love your product, we get a lot of value, our barrier to bigger adoption is sometimes the pricing model, because we would love to kind of go into this dark data that we have and start mining it. But and that's really part of the reason why we looked at the pricing model and saying, how do we allow customers to have the flexibility of focusing on getting value out as opposed to paying for data that's being consumed, like a more traditional model. Now, that model may not be suitable for everyone, so we've given multiple pricing options so that the customers have economic incentive to look at what makes sense for them commercially, both in the short term and the long term. Because in the long term, as folks start getting more and more of their data and value, they want the predictability, but they also want a unit-based pricing that makes sense, that is economical at scale as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's empowering, isn't it, with that informed choice and options for different types of businesses? Because again, I think sometimes when organizations have perhaps thought of options in technology that would be really beneficial, sometimes I think they might be out of reach. But actually here you've got something that could be for SMB all the way through to enterprise. And I really like and respect what you're doing there. So thank you for sharing about that. I really, really like that. And kind of drilling in, you touched on it a little bit there about COVID-19. How do you think overall that's affected digital and data prioritization?
Well, maybe what I'll do, and I always like to look at these through the lens of the customers that I interact with. I have about 150 customers last year that we met with across different sectors. And what we saw, the patterns that I saw, is anything that is consumer facing or customer facing was prioritized. And people are much more sensitive around the performance and availability of these business critical services. So whether it is healthcare organizations like the Veterans Affairs that in the United States that basically had to focus their in-person delivery to COVID-related services, and took everything that was non-COVID related online through telehealth and telemedicine. That meant that more than they ever anticipated, they had to support a scale and demand unprecedented than before. So many businesses have gone through parts of their digital services being almost used at a scale. In times, there's no such a thing as business hours oftentimes, during these times. So as you can imagine, having been a CTO before, you have to pivot and shift your investments in areas where the customers are and where the revenue is. And that's been something we've seen in telemedicine, remote access for all employees. So if you think about every IT organization had to support employees working from home, that's very complex. Again, it requires that shared services, conferencing services, email, etc., are both secure and performant from completely different locations than before. In banking, we've seen a shift to mobile everything. So not just mobile banking on personal banking, but commercial banking, investment banking, being able to do high value transactions without ever being in a room. We've seen this in manufacturing. Supply chains are running at a very high, very low maintenance window and high scale in areas that you would not think about. I met with the CTO of one of the largest beverage companies. They happen to make both soft drinks and also coffee. And they said overnight, our business shifted from shipping soft drinks to businesses through well-established routes to selling coffee on our website to individuals who wanted to now drink coffee and tea from home. And so these are all the pivots that we've seen in the last year. Unfortunately, for many of the IT brethren, it's meant very late hours, long weekends. The fact that the IT teams have to work remotely and do this in their home while taking care of their family, and has been really a testament to how great they are. I mean, they're at the front line of digital transformation, and they're doing this last year, not in the best year to be changing and transforming their business.
Absolutely. I think an incredibly important shout out there. It's been effectively an essential service in so many ways. And I think one of the other implications you kind of drew on there a little bit as well is around skills implication as well, in terms of training staff, communications, collaborations, tools, and also how the awareness has changed from the consumer perspective as well in terms of, I'm thinking things like alternative payment methods. We were talking about mobile banking. There as one example. So the rise of alternative payment methods, how that's opened out to new demographics, older users, for example, and a lot of these trends are set to last. So we've got this melting point of change here that's coming through for me. So it's that skills implications there is particularly critical as we move ahead, and people really appreciating the value of data from that holistic perspective. So love what you're saying there. It's fantastic. So perhaps we look ahead a little bit now to digital and cloud transformation as it continues. What are your thoughts on the future of cloud?
Well, I think the model that we're seeing commonly played out, again, across all the different industries, is that a single cloud vendor does not address all the needs that customers have. So the new world is multi-cloud and also hybrid, because as much as it makes sense to put some of these new initiatives into the cloud and even lift and shift some of the workloads into the cloud, there still is some workloads that are not appropriate to move into the cloud. In some cases, it's risk reward dynamics are not there. In some cases, it's regulatory. They're waiting for cloud companies to provide some of the security and regulatory needs. So this new world is going to be hybrid. We see the technologies like Kubernetes really enable cloud portability, which is good for the customer. It prevents cloud lock-in. Many organizations are looking at, how do I maximize the value that Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud provides, and take all the benefits and all the features, but then be able to not be fully locked in and have some ability to be able to manage a different set. The problem it creates, this multi-hybrid cloud, is that it creates a skills shortage, because it's hard enough to find experts that know AWS or Azure well. It's much harder now to basically think of a staffing model that includes cloud experts across all the different cloud models. And what we've seen is this is where the tools come in. The tooling and the technology should be able to provide a scaling factor for organizations where they can have their black belts, their experts, but then have the experts set up and configure these solutions so that the other folks that are maybe not the deepest experts in an individual cloud can take advantage and do their daily life without having to know all the ins and outs and the specifics of that. So that's a big opportunity. Many of our customers feel that when it comes to people, process, and technology, the process and the technology part needs to evolve and become modernized. The people part is interesting because there's an element of training. Just like you said, one of the things that I've been very pleased to see during the pandemic is how much education is out there, so that as people, unfortunately, some of the people who lost their work, they could at least get back online, refresh and reset some of their skill sets and get back into the workforce. So phenomenal. I was blown away, on how much is out there, and companies like Adobe and others have made it affordable, as have we, made it easier for folks to pick up the entry-level training and the basic training that they need so that they can do a skills refresh.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely key. And I think perhaps in the past, the cultural elements, things like IT business alignment, but that continual investment in training sometimes not as much focus. But I think the pandemic experience has really brought that center stage for reskilling, upskilling, and kind of this continuous learning for life. I think has never mattered more than it does at the moment. And the support of that by leading organizations such as yourself, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. Is really opening new doors and democratizing access to it. So I think that's huge. What are your thoughts around AI and machine learning specifically?
Yeah.
Around the developments here to really enhance experience for the consumers, as we touched on a little bit before. I just would love to drill into that area a little bit more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think AI and ML, and we see this in business outcomes. Look, the a lot of the talk track around AI and ML within the industry was, again, the traditional, let's just throw out a new name and term, and I look at this as very much as a co-pilot, as something that's a productivity booster for the overwork IT teams. We've seen this in production. Where we've been able to reduce the number of false positives, number hours of mean time to repair, so the investigation, et cetera, by leveraging machine learning on the operational data and being able to pinpoint where the problems may be. Look, when you're in a war room, nobody's excited about let's keep going. You want to, as quickly as possible, find the root cause, and more importantly, avoid it the next time. This is where I've seen the biggest shift around AI and ML. As the algorithms learn your environment, as they understand anomalies, as they start looking at dynamic thresholding, they can process millions and billions of data elements much faster than any human brain can. And having this in your hand is incredibly powerful. So again, as I tell oftentimes my colleagues in the industry and then our customers, this is not about robots taking over jobs. This is more about having that superhuman suit, the Iron Man suit, that makes Tony Stark be able to do much more. And we've seen that. So it's a great productivity booster. It's a great morale booster because, quite frankly, it takes some of the mundane work that nobody appreciates around duplicate or chasing down leads that lead to nowhere. And I think we're quite a ways before autonomous or fully automated pieces. Where the technology is right now is to really help humans make the right assessment with superhuman powers, if that makes sense.
It makes eminent sense. I love that example you gave there. And I think for me, it's all about people and technology in partnership. And you're absolutely right, taking away some of those routine, mundane daily tasks and freeing up more time for more meaningful, higher value added types of activities. I couldn't agree more with you around that. I think just generally as well, some great advancements using AI machine learning for visibility, getting rid of some of the silos that we've had in the past and bringing into kind of that one single pane of glass kind of approach to managing change, which has been absolutely huge. But also areas like AI ops and model ops as well, to reduce the actual waste of moving from into production and making sure we're really optimizing the models that we're developing. So I'm really excited about the trajectory I'm seeing there as well.
And Sally, if I could double click on something you said about AI ops and the silos. And again, I've been in this industry for my entire career, over 27 years. Had the pleasure of watching each technology and different approaches to IT operations. Over the years, many organizations, not strategically, but because they had to solve problems, ended up collecting a set of fragmented tools to be able to monitor the network, monitor the servers, monitor the applications. And the pace and the rate of change, all the things we talked about around the data volume in terms of velocity and volume, is really making these point products, create blind sides for organizations. It provides a fragmented view, so you don't have this holistic view of how is the business services that I'm serving and supporting being impacted by my technology components, my application components. So that end-to-end view, I think, is very critical. The only way you can do that is through a data-driven analytics model. It's a great use case for using AI and ML so that you can sift through these data lakes and be able to have a complete and holistic view of how you are delivering services to your constituents. And when there's a problem, how do you, hopefully proactively identify the issue, but more importantly, predict and avoid problems before they happen? That's when we talk about modernization, that's what we're talking about. And it's not science fiction. It's actually in production and many customers that are getting that benefit today.
Absolutely. Again, it's that proactive stance, isn't it? And kind of going back to a previous role I had, that ability, I would have absolutely loved the ability that there is now today to filter from an alert management point of view, so much noise that comes in. And now the use of AI and machine learning there to really prioritize that, to take care of the regular ones, the seen before types of alerts, and really flag up when something does need that human intervention. So many really exciting developments there as well. So I couldn't agree more strongly. Fantastic examples. I think it kind of brings me on to think about, as you mentioned there about legacy, and you kind of bolt on tech that's happened in the past and the problems we get from that. So just thinking about companies that may feel that I'm too behind, that we've fallen behind, we're in this unprecedented data age we've got at the moment. What's your position on how companies feel that they are in that position? How can they recover? How can they bring themselves forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what it takes is taking a portfolio approach. So looking at your portfolio of applications, categorizing them about which are the ones that are crown jewels or highly competitive, and prioritizing those as being either rewritten, re-architected at digital native. So we've seen this a lot where healthcare companies can't, who have thousands of apps, they if they were to rewrite every app, they would never finish, or by the time they would finish, they would have to start again. So brutal prioritization around which applications are worth, quite frankly, the investment and the calories to be able to modernize. And then looking at operational models that are data oriented across all the rest. So that you still get the operational benefit of being able to manage a hybrid environment with some legacy and some brand new. You get the value out of the new investments because you're addressing, the front of the spear, whether that's revenue generating services or the area that you're competing against a cloud native competitor. But you're also lowering your operational cost, and you can improve your customer sat and brand reputation without having to rewrite everything.
Absolutely. I totally echo that. And I would say take the time now to prepare and really evaluate your kind of is now state, and then consider your desire to be state. So you've got to take that time to do that preparation. And I'd also say, and I think we've echoed this really in our conversation quite a lot, which is lovely to see, but as well as investment and looking at the technology, taking that time to invest in your culture, your education, and co-creation approaches to bring together all different levels of the organization, reduce that propensity for silos, and look at things like shifting roles. So that's something else I'm seeing a lot of in the moment across CFO, CIO, CEO, and CISO roles. So again, focusing on that area is really, really vital.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that too. I can think of at least a dozen customers where the new executive that came in to take over operations either came from the application side or came in from the business. And they just have a different mindset, because rather than kind of embracing a technology for technology's sake view, they can look at it through the lens of business outcomes, availability, and quite frankly, then they also have the credibility to be able to go back to the business and say you're underinvesting in IT or skill sets in a language that the business understands. So if you were to invest this is the capabilities that we would provide to the business, or be able to go back to the apps team and says, the software that you're throwing over the fence needs to be much better for us to, again, build that CI/CD model. And quite frankly, diversity is really, really important. I think the best ideas in organizations come from diversity, and diversity ranges from everything from ethnic background and race, sex, all the different human elements that make the world so unique and perfect, but also from experience and skill sets. And experience and skill sets that are diverse help you really be able to avoid blind spots, make the case for true change, because digital transformation is not a fashion concept. It's about changing the business and making meaningful change to the business And I genuinely believe you need a diverse set of ideas, experiences, backgrounds, demographics to make that happen.
I couldn't agree more strongly. Absolutely. And I'd love to drill into that area a little bit more when we explore around talent in organizations and that diversity of experience. It's exactly what we do with our nonprofit. So I couldn't agree more strongly. Thank you, Keir. Honestly, it's been a fantastic conversation. I think a great, very holistic, but integrated deep dive into all things digital transformation. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.